Dear Sir, at the very beginning of World War II, a family in Canada sent all 3 of their boys off to war in Europe. None of them returned home. This is their story. William Boyd Anderson was born in Scotland in 1883 and went to Craigmyle, Canada in 1914. In 1915 he married Dagny Secure from Denmark, who was visiting her aunt when they met. In 1917 their firstborn was born, Lloyd. 3 years later that was followed by James and William. They were all schooled in their little hamlet of Craigmyle, and they absolutely excelled in sports, and that included hockey and also baseball. Shortly after the war broke out in Europe, twins Billy and Jimmy, as they were known, joined the RCAF and did their basic training at the new Penhold base, as well as at Edmonton and also in Manitoba. Enlisted as pilots. Billy received his wings at River, Manitoba, and his rank was of flying officer. Jimmy earned his wings at Mossbank, Saskatchewan, and earned the rank of flight sergeant. Lloyd was 25 when he enlisted in the RCAF as a pilot. He trained at bases in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. He was grounded after a training accident and was then sent to Trenton, Ontario, where he became an air gunner. All 3 saw active duty. R92560 Sergeant James Sangster Anderson, RCAF, Air Bomber of Halifax Aircraft Number 7766 of 158 Squadron, died of injuries on the 17th of October 1942 at York Military Hospital after the aircraft crashed on the 14th of October 1942 at Eastmoor in Yorkshire. The pilot was returning from a successful night mission. However, he missed the aerodrome by making too wide of a circuit, but he did find it again upon approaching the beacon. But by this time, unfortunately, the pilot was unable to retract his undercarriage and the plane fell short of the runway 400 yards to the port side. 6 of the crew were injured, but luckily went on to survive. Unfortunately, Sergeant James Anderson did not. He was 22 years old and he was unmarried, and he died 3 days after the plane crash. J7755 Flight Officer William Boyd Anderson, RCAF, pilot of Hudson Aircraft AM 551 of 407 Squadron, was with the aircraft and crew reported missing on the 20th of January 1943 whilst carrying out a reconnaissance and anti-shipping operation off the Dutch coast. An SOS was made by the plane 40 miles off the English coast, and due to that 4 aircraft were sent up to look for them, but nothing was ever seen or heard of the plane or crew ever again. For official purposes, the death of this officer was presumed to have occurred on the 20th of January 1943. He was 22 years of age and unmarried, just like his twin brother that had fallen before him. Dagny Anderson, the boy's mother, never accepted William's death because there was never a plane crash, there was never a body, there was never a retrieval. So for years and years after the plane crash, and even after World War II, she still set a place at the kitchen table just in case he came home for his tea. The eldest brother, Lloyd, joined the RCAF, signing his attestation papers on the 5th of September 1941, while both brothers were alive. He volunteered for air duties and was training as a pilot when he was involved in an accident that was not his fault. Due to the loss of his confidence, he retrained as an air gunner At this time, James was killed in action, and their father wrote letters to the Secretary of the Department of National Defence, Air, requesting that Billy be repatriated and Lloyd to not be posted overseas. But his letter was to no avail. Lloyd completed his training and was posted overseas. After completing operational training, he was posted to 625 Squadron to start his tour of ops. During this time, Billy was reported missing. This prompted his father to write a third letter. Dear Sir, replying to your letter dated July the 22nd in regards to my son, Flight Officer William Boyd Anderson, missing after air operations on January the 20th, 1943, may state that I have never heard of any news in regard to my son, only that which was received from his wing commander of the squadron he was attached to, informing me what had happened. I might also add that I have lost 2 sons in this terrible war. The only son that I have left in my family is in Great Britain, an air gunner. R31824 LG Anderson, serving with the RCAF. My wife's health has given way under the terrible strain and the loss of our twin boys, as our 3 boys as a whole family. I am over 60 years of age and it is pretty hard on me. Could it be possible for my son to be posted in Canada in a view of being closer to home and might have a chance of seeing his mother, which I know would benefit her health? My wife's mother and sister live in Denmark and she has never heard from them since even the occupation, so you can understand what she is suffering. We have given our share in this great ordeal, and if anything can be done to make it easier for us, my wife and I would extend to you our greatest appreciation. Yours sincerely, W.B. Anderson, Craigmyle, Alberta. P.S. If you want confirmation in regards to my wife's health, write to the Secretary Trias of Village of Craigmyle. Further request by father in July 43 to return son from overseas for duty in Canada due to loss of 2 sons and mother's failing health. Request not approved by AFHQ due to existences of the current service. In a letter dated the 18th of February 1943 to Betty Reed, a friend in Craigmyle, Lloyd noted that he'd been able to meet up with her brother Jack and had been entertained by Canadian soldiers playing hockey. He was obviously homesick. The old town must be dead, but oh boy, I would like to be in it right now, he wrote. Lloyd lost his life on the 30th of March 1944. So Mr. and Mrs. Anderson lost a boy in 1942, 1943 and 1944. It was not until after the MRES report of Flight Lieutenant Goldstein dated the 19th of August 1948 that they learned the fate of their eldest son. This was 3 whole years after the end of the war. Dear Sir, in acknowledging your letter dated April the 15th, I wish to thank you for the information in with regards to our sons Lloyd and William Boyd. It was a little comfort to us to hear Lloyd's resting place had finally been located and to know he had not suffered in the crash. As for Billy, I doubt very much of your being able to locate him, as we are afraid his plane crashed into the North Sea. We lost another son who served in the Air Force, Flight Sergeant J.S. Anderson. He is buried in Fulford Cemetery in York, England. Jim was a twin brother of Billy. My wife and I wondered if a marker could be placed for Billy in Fulford, as Billy and Jimmy were twins and part of one another. Although they fought in different squadrons, the 3 boys composed all of our family. Your department may not have anything to do in a case handling this matter, but will you kindly state our case through the proper channels? Yours sincerely, W.B. Anderson. Attention, Mr. Maybury. Above referenced aircrew were brothers. Flight Sergeant James Sangster Anderson died of injuries on the 17th of the 10th, 1942, following a flying accident in the UK on the 14th of the 10th, 1942. He is buried in the Fulford Cemetery, York, Yorkshire, England. Flight Officer William Boyd Anderson was missing from operations, subsequently presumed dead effective of the 20th of the 1st, 1943. Nothing has been heard of him or his crew, and he does not have a known grave. Flight Sergeant Lloyd George Anderson was missing from operations, subsequently presumed dead effective of the 31st of the 3rd, 1944. He is buried at Rheinberg in multiple graves with his crew numbered 15 and 16, row A, plot number 17. Attached is a copy of the letter received at Ottawa from their next of kin, father. It will be noted that these three brothers were the entire family of Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, and that he requested that a marker be erected in Fulford Cemetery beside the grave of Flight Sergeant James Sangster Anderson for his twin brother, Flight Officer William Boyd Anderson, who has no known grave. The Commission's policy in this regard is not known. However, due to the fact that this is an exceptional one, it is strongly recommended that your Commission give this case special consideration. In any case, Fulford Cemetery would appear to be a private cemetery, and it is felt that the father has already paid more than his share in losing his three sons without marking them, to erect a marker at his own expense. Your early attention and decision in this case would be much appreciated. R.D. Albert, Flying Officer. It should also be noted here that Lloyd Anderson, the third brother, did not have a good time in the bomber command groups at all. Because he'd lost two of his brothers killed in action, he was seen as a jinx on the plane. People didn't want to fly with him, not because of who he was, but they just thought that he was an in-the-air jinx. It made it really, really difficult for him to do his job or to get the men's appreciation, or even really to have any friends within the unit. And it took 10 operational flights before he became part of the team. Mrs. Anderson was named Silver Cross Mother in 1959, and she travelled by train to Ottawa for the 11th of November Remembrance Day services to lay a wreath at the National War Memorial. In the 1950s, the elementary school at Penhold Air Base also changed its name to commemorate the three boys who lost their lives, and it became known as the Andersons of Craigmyle School. When the base was closed in the mid-1990s, the commander donated artefacts to the Craigmyle Community Hall and had a plaque mounted in granite placed with the boys' parents' graves, also at Craigmyle. What is more tragic is that this family lost their last son as a result of the Nuremberg raid. It was the last one of the Battle of Berlin and the most catastrophic of the bomber command. By the end of World War II, the tiny little hamlet of Craigmyle in Alberta, Canada, would be absolutely devastated by the loss of 5 of their young men who came over here to fight for Europe. Tragically, Dagny Anderson would be the rare recipient of 3 Canadian Memorial Crosses, one for each of her sons that would not be returning home. R92560, Flight Sergeant J.S. Anderson, Observer, Royal Canadian Air Force, on the 17th of October 1942, aged 22. His spirit is eternal. His twin brother Billy was lost the 20th of January 1943. Thank you so much for watching. We have loads of stories that just keep coming our way, not only from RAF Lindholm and the surrounding moors, which is where I am now, but throughout Yorkshire, which is where I absolutely love. We will be updating every Thursday or before, so please stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching and take care. Bye bye. Remarkably, here in Fulford as well, there is a section of Polish war graves. I was always led to believe that all the known Polish war graves in the area were actually down at Newark, but there is a beautiful row here which is dedicated to the Polish forces, and this is Fulford Cemetery near York.